All right. It's Thursday, March 12th, 2020. This is the live show with Travel Massive. In this episode, An Industry in Quarantine, we're chatting with our Travel Massive leaders and members about the impacts of COVID-19 on the travel industry. We'll be joined today by Mario Bernardi, Alison Sager. They're both involved quite heavily with the Italian travel industry, as well as Julieta Delgado from Latin America. I'm Kevin O'Shaughnessy. I'm your host for today. Our producer is Maria Stoyanova. Your comments and questions are welcome during this chat. Fire them up in the chat window in Zoom here. We might be able to open up some comments after the event, but the best place for them is when we're live. And if you've anything that you'd really like to share, please reach out to Maria. We'll see if we can have you on before the end of the episode. Mario, I thought we'd start maybe with you. Just to give us a sense of your own business. I mentioned that you're involved with Italy. You're an Italian, but you're based in the UK. Just give me a quick two-liner about what it is that you guys do.
Basically, we do private tours and multi-day tours, including hotel transfer, basically a bespoke all-inclusive holidays. 90% of our business is Italy and mostly from North America and Southeast Asia, and Europe, of course. So we have been badly impacted, especially in the last 2 weeks, but there have been cancellations starting basically towards the end of February. The earliest cancellation came around the 25th, 26th of February, when some US universities closed their programs and repatriated all their students as early as, the 25th of February, 26th of February, and has been like a cascade effect. Of course, after the US government banned traveling to Italy about 10 days ago, again, all tours were canceled to Easter, and now we have cancellation up to October 2020. So basically the whole year is gone.
So when there's a restriction on travel to Italy and you're a tour operator that specializes in the Italian market, that's it. Your product has vanished. That must put a huge constraint on you from a revenue generating perspective.
Of
I know
course,
you're
yes.
based in other markets too, but when Italy goes, that's a big pressure.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just for us. There's many companies. I've been in touch with a lot of colleagues, and, we all have the same concerns. We basically have a plan of a sort of kind of hibernation for like 3 to 6 months, cut the cost to the minimum, and prepare for, of course, when the traveling will be, returning to Italy. Of course, everybody wants to go to Italy, but we'll still have some inquiries now. People are likely to plan. Of course, we can't put dates down because we don't know when this is over. Hopefully by the summer, but we don't know at this moment.
So yesterday, just to give a sense of timing, because this is, I suppose it's safe to call it a crisis that's been evolving day by day for the last 2 weeks. Just last night, overnight for us here in Europe, Donald Trump addressed the nation and said that that's it. The Schengen area is closed for business. So folks in France, Italy, Spain, of course, can no longer travel to the United States by air or I suppose any other way. Ireland went into lockdown as well just about 2 hours ago. Italy's been in lockdown for just a few more days than us. And I see that's going to be the trend for the next week or so. We're going to hear a lot more about locking down, event cancellations, that kind of thing, worldwide. Mario, when you say hibernation, it very much is either there's nowhere to go or there's nobody available to actually travel. What are you guys going to do while in hibernation? Is it product development? Is it just keep costs to a minimum and hope for the best? Give me a sense of what's happening when you're in hibernation.
Well, as generally you would do in a crisis, there's a moment of consolidation. So you get rid of everything that is not, the core of the business. You concentrate on the core of the business. You try to reduce all your costs. You call all your investors, the bank, and try to, put together. That's the aspect that this is a global, is that there's been declared a pandemic. So of course governments are going to put then, something to sustain us. My main concern is about the guides, because a lot of guides are freelance. They don't have any other source of income. So I'm really trying to do something to keep in touch with them constantly and make sure they get through that at the best. So I just recently suggested to everybody to keep like a diary and maybe make a short video or something about what they're doing as a guide during the quarantine.
Okay,
Or,
that's interesting. Because at the end of the day, these are personalities. They have something
yeah,
animated to say, I think. So,
yeah,
that kind of almost, that's like a whole generation of YouTubers that's ready to burst out, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
That sounds actually quite interesting. But Mary, you touched on that point there about the guides. It's not just your own business, and you have guides in, I think, in Italy, but also in Spain and in Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. Um, that's just your guides you have some direct contact with, but just in general, the feeling with the, like, I suppose that sector of the economy, it's quite consistent whether they're working for you or for somebody else. A lot of this is the kind of Uber style gig economy. These are one-off companies, self-employed guys and gals that are out making money on their own. When you're not there to drive them business, they're in real trouble. How much of an impact is this going to have on just guides? How many will be securely employed, and how many will be impacted directly if they're just gigging?
For my experience, I think about 2/3 of guides rely only on the guiding business as their source of income. And the fact that many now work for several platforms, they will find themselves completely out of business. These platforms as well, they have all policy of full refund. Get Your Guide, Airbnb, they all refund. Now we heard but Choose by Locals is doing the same, which usually they have a 30 days or 60 days no refund policy. So, which is understandable. But on the other end, people relying on this, this line of work, they will have, I think, to reconsider their relationship with these platforms. And I think there'll be changes in the future, because people will be less willing to work on those terms of condition, and will be looking more to get in touch with the clients directly and have a more secure business or more constant type of business. I think the industry, especially in the activity sectors, will be changed by this. Not just because the people are changing, the trust is changing, but also how people see their relationship with this super employers, which are not employers. It's just like a platform that pass you on business. But then on the other side, they do want that kind of relation that you represent the company and you represent a platform in a certain way. So it's what's the term? The Uberification of work. And I think the same concern and same promise that self-employed drivers had for Uber, the same complaints, I think they'll be raised in the activity sector very soon, with guides, with the teacher who do teach cooking classes, people who do food tours, and a whole number of professionals that work in the travel business.
Just to give a sense of it, and we might have to edit this out, Mario, if you don't want me to share the number, but I remember you saying something in the region of about 2/3 of guides are in the gig economy. Is that true? Is it as much?
I
as
mean, 2/3 of the total licensed guides, at least in Italy, or at least in the cities where we operate, so Rome, Venice, Florence, they do this as the exclusive source of income. A third of them, which have a license or are qualified to work, they have another income. They are school teachers. They work for the government. I myself, when I started, I was working for the government part-time, and then part-time I was a freelance guide for many years, because being a seasonal job, traditionally, you would have had another income. But in the last 10 years, yes, from basically November till March. But this has changed because numbers now were very, very high in most of the art cities. So especially guides in Naples, in Rome, in Florence, in Venice, they didn't need another job, because even if they stay home for a few weeks in the winter, they made enough money during the season, but not this season, evidently.
Mario, it seems like a foregone conclusion for you. That's it. It's over for at least the near future. You're in hibernation mode. Does that mean that does that at least give you a chance to seek out new channels? Will you spend some time in Italy anyway? working on some new tour packages for future customers. How do you see your own time for the next 3 to 6 months, for example?
So I will be spending a lot more time with my kids, which is a good thing. I got a little toddlers. One was chatting before, now it's with Granny. So I decided to take as much as the time I can just to spend with my family and just wait. And I'm in the UK, so we can still travel, but I believe in 2 weeks we'll be in a lockdown as well. And so that's, but of course, yeah, I'll be rethinking the business. We got a lot of new projects, some projects that we had, which were very interesting. One of them I was about to talk in Berlin. I was flying to Berlin and to talk about that, but we have to put it on hold for, this year. And maybe I might start, another side business in the, something more local, like a food business or something I wanted to do for a long time. So maybe this is a chance to do it. This kind of disruption and this crisis, they also come as a new start, as an opportunity. You always have to see these dramatic moments also as an opportunity, as a moment to, open up new possibilities, which will come. But, I think this tough times also will change many people. And that's a time to reflect about what you've done and what you want to go in the future.
If you're ever in a geeky mood, you can check out Flight Radar or one of the other flight tracking apps and just watch the volume of traffic spilling over the Atlantic here between Europe and North America. That's going to go now. I think we're going to be in a very different business regardless. In as many as 2 weeks' time. I don't know what the shape of the business is going to be like anymore. I thought I could get a handle on it. It's just going to be very, very different. It'll be new. There'll be new opportunities. That's great, and I can hear that in your voice, Mario. You found potential new projects to work on, but I know that's a different business when we come out the other side of it. Is there something to be said about the role of the bigger platforms when it comes to the cancellation policies? Is it a good thing, really, or is it a bad thing for the small business owner in particular?
So I think on the business side, of course, nobody could foresee this. Although I did had a client 4 or 5 years ago that was, very convinced that this was certainly happening, and I've been in touch with him, and he's like somewhere in
5 weeks in
isolation.
advance. That'd be,
No, he told me like 4
years
years ago. 4 years ago. 4 years ago,
Okay.
as the CEO of a medic company in the US.
Okay.
And he was saying, get somewhere, far away in the countryside to go and isolate because it was happening. I thought it was just a cuckoo, but it was right. Anyway, I think one thing the platforms should look at is to give to the professionals and the small business that work for them that kind of support in terms of insurance, in terms of opportunities. I'm not saying that they have to pay for, but give them the advice in order to be prepared for this. One of the senior guides I'm in touch, he's retired, but he's been working for 50 years. And he said, we had this in the 70s, we had the terrorists, we had a number of things, we survived through. And he always saying, put the 25% of whatever you earn every day aside, because there would be times, our generation don't have that mentality anymore, that people who, were born during the war and survived in the 60s and 70s had. But I think the big platforms should look into something to give the guides some options to look into insurance policies, into some kind of
or something.
Or something to protect the future bookings that they got. You can probably buy an insurance on that missed opportunity. Usually platforms don't pay you if a cancellation happens, but it doesn't mean that you cannot protect yourself against that loss of income. And even if your business is very small, if you're only a freelance, maybe you could do that. I think the individual guide don't have the time and the resources to look into that, but that's something that maybe a bigger organization could look into it, just to create a deeper relationship and a bigger bond with the guide, feeling them more like a valued partner rather than just like somebody who delivers a service and you take a cut of them, which is the relationship that basically most platforms have now and most businesses have now with the providers. I think it's something that weeks ago everybody was saying about the OTAs and all this, increased power that they have over the travel market and the activity sector, especially, is in the end of the day, the key is whoever delivers the service, the actual guy that goes there, gets the key tickets, get the clients into a place, take a picture, put it online, send it to you, and actually creates the service. That's the core of the business. And somehow the industry has forgot that. And I hope this will ring a bell and make people think we should go down to the actual people who do this and how to do this and protect them and cover them.
Mario, you're...
I'm not a socialist.
No, that's okay. We're not going down that line of discussion, don't worry. But what I was going to say was, Mario, you're a very proud Italian, but you're based in the UK. What was it like to observe the evolution of the Italian course of the COVID-19 outbreak?
So I was in Italy mid-February. I flew back just 3-4 days before the thing happened, mid-February. Mm-hmm. And I fly back and forth every other week from March to October. So I was due to fly 2 days ago, and my flight got cancelled overnight. Yeah. I already had info that it wasn't the case to go because you've been locked down. And I have my family there. So my dad and, they all are now in isolation. And, it was really, really bad seeing that happening. But I had the feeling that the government knew that the end point would have been the lockdown, but they didn't want to make the bigger panic. And I had a discussion with some colleagues and some other businesses. I don't know if you saw, there was a hashtag on Facebook at the end of February, beginning of March, Italy is safe, travel to Italy. And then videos were made, and a lot of, even the official channels, like the official Italy Tourist Board, publish messages saying, "Oh, travel to Italy, don't be scared, don't be afraid, it is safe." We also did we did a kind of a message saying, at the moment the country is still safe, but if you have a condition, don't travel. And people like posting pictures of going out, having drinks and socializing, in spite of the the warning saying you need to close down. I think because when China started the lockdown, I think most governments realized that there's no escape from that. If you cannot contain in the early days, we are going to be that. I believe that England will go into lockdown in about a week or 10 days. I don't want to scare anyone, and I had a lot of, not arguments, but discussions with other guys or people saying, no, we need to tell our clients still come, please come. And I said, I think this will turn against us, because what you do is based on trust. People travel with us and book us because they trust us. They trust what we teach them, or what we recommend them, whatever we do for them. So we need to be honest. And now we need to tell them, stay home, because that's what it's the right thing to do. That's what all the scientists are saying and the governments are saying, as much as we hurt us, but that's the reality of it.
There's one other thing I wanted to bring up before we bring in Alison, Mario. It was you're of a certain age. You're like myself. We're a little bit old, so we've had enough experience. What I was going to say was, we've been around long enough to have seen a few crises, right? And it was something that you said during our casting call just half an hour ago, that it's something quite surreal not to see Italians in their their native setting, which is outside and enjoying, it might be a terrace somewhere or outside a bar, I don't know, but it just outside of the home, and having empty streets, it just doesn't feel right to me. You're saying it doesn't feel right to you. You referred to something that happened in the 1980s that really put it in context for me. Do you want to share that story? We can skip it if you don't want to go there.
Yeah, when I was 6 or 7, Chernobyl happened, and at that time, the clouds of the spillout of the radiation was coming, towards the Europe. And I remember, that was the first time I was 7 or 8. The fear, my family, my relatives, my aunties, all being very fearful. We were not allowed to go and play outside. We were not allowed to drink milk and eat vegetables. I mean, we perceived that. And that's one constant memory, because that has never happened since to my family. And just yesterday, I was, FaceTiming with my family. My cousin just turned 18, and she had a stay-home party just by herself, and they couldn't do anything. And I saw the fear in them that I have never seen since then, and
Wow.
that really, I think. In Italy, we have survived barbarian invasions, the war. We had, waves of, Normans, and we had invasions from everybody around the Mediterranean at some point, the wars. And, the Colosseum is still there, and, the Roman culture has survived, the Italian culture has survived, it always bounce back better and better. But I think that this will have an effect on people, because the very reason why most people love Italy so much, want to travel to Italy, is because the way we have of spending time and socialize and being outside, being together. When we, greet each other, we hug each other, we kiss each other. There's this kind of warmth that you can feel even if you're a stranger. So years ago, I was working as a guide in the Pantheon, and there was a musician, a retired musician from Prague, who used to come there every afternoon. And he told to me, like, I live here because this is the only place in the world anyone could feel at home, even if you not originally from here. And, and it's true. If you go there, you feel like you belong straight away. But I think, that this will have an impact on that, because now people are scared, people are at home, and initially people were trying to say, oh, this will go away, this is not true, and now everybody's locked down. So that for that, as an Italian, as a Roman, I'm very concerned, and I don't know what to say about this.
Well, look, I think the way you put it was, it's the first real fear they felt since Chernobyl, and that's quite something. When there's a fear of going outside, and there's a real shock, I think is how it is. I want to stay on this theme and bring in Alison Sager. Alison runs a PR firm. She's based in Rome, at least for now, until they shut down the airspace. Alison, if we see a blur on your webcam feed as you dash out the door for the last flight, that's okay. But you're a small business owner there in Rome. You work for different parts of the tourism industry, whether it's destination DMOs, destination marketing organizations based in Italy, startups and other companies that are trying to get their message out generally. Rome was classically not part of the problem until very recently, or part of the affected area until recently. Can you give me the last 48 hours, how it's been in Rome and how it's affected you in particular?
Sure. So, right, exactly. 2.5 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago, the news was Northern Italy, the 10 towns that were on lockdown immediately. And so, as Mario talked about, nobody really was very concerned until potentially about a week ago. And then, the last 48 hours have really, I think we've really hit that point where we're all very sober and very, very understanding of the current situation. Also, to live in a city that is an open air museum that is, has actually had huge issues of over tourism in the last 2 to 3 years, to see a city that thrives on tourism pretty much 70 to 80% completely empty out is shocking. It's shocking, to say the least, alongside everything else that's happening in terms of what the government is asking everybody to do and the regulations to follow. So I think everybody's in a bit of a state of shock, also because I appreciated the example to Chernobyl, but there's nothing in the air, and there's nothing, it's not like a bomb is coming down, or there's nothing. It's a beautiful spring day here. Spring has actually sprung in Rome. And so it's this very odd feeling of, also talking about that, the connection of Italians. You can't hug your friends. You can't kiss hello to your friends. You can't see your friends. And it's all for this thing that it's like in us, actually. So I think that is a very surreal feeling, to feel frightened that you might do something to somebody else and you have no idea if that is in you. And I think that's also something that we started to realize in the last 48 hours.
We look at, especially from the Irish perspective, we hear a lot about Italy and all the comparisons, negative and positive, come out. There's always some convenient pundit on Twitter saying something remarkably unhelpful or sometimes helpful. But there's no doubt they were ahead of the curve in northern Italy. There is a great trade between China and Italy. There are some great bonds there. If there was going to be a mobility-based communication, it would be. It makes sense that with that mobility comes the risk of the spread. But just bearing in mind that it's a little bit ahead of everybody. It's a little bit ahead of the UK. It's a little bit ahead of us here in Ireland. Does it feel like we have peaked yet in Italy? Do we see the numbers turning a little bit? Do we see the mood changing even? But first of all, has the disease stopped getting worse? Let's say that.
Right. I know that, we are watching like hawks at 6:00 p.m. The epidemiologist and the virologist all come on air, and we're watching that news like hawks every single night. We all have our updating of the numbers of that GD website. From what I gather, the last day, the numbers came down of the deceased and of the cases, but, just a bit. I think that it hasn't peaked in this sense. I think that with these measures that they've just taken in the last 24 hours, so now we are on full, even fuller lockdown, let's say. Only the most essential stores are open, grocery stores, the banks, post offices, and pharmacies, those things. While every other store is really pretty much closed and shut down. All the hotels are shut down, all the restaurants are shut down, everything is just shut down, everybody's at home. I think we'll start to see what they're talking about, that curve flatten a bit, but I don't think we've reached that point yet. And I think that people finally are starting to understand, but not due to ignorance. I think it really took this to help people understand. And because I am American and I also am watching and very, very,
external viewpoints.
I have family all over the US. I have family throughout, the world. And so I'm watching this like a hawk also, how it's developing in other countries and feeding them information from my own experience. I think we finally realized that it is my civic duty. It is my duty as a human being to actually stay inside, because even I was talking to somebody yesterday and I said, I went for a run, and they said, please don't do that. Even running solo, just don't do that. Just try to stay as much as possible in the house, because even doing that, a walk, even if you're solo, it's just, you're still circulating. And I don't have symptoms. I'm, in that age group that if you don't have, most people don't have symptoms. And it's just for the common good, for our fellow humanity. And I also, have been receiving input from friends who have family members and friends in the hospitals. And it's heartbreaking. And so you start to realize that this is no longer just, my business is gone to shreds, but this is actually a human crisis. And so I think that's where we are right now. We're all starting to look at one another like, okay, I have to save you. And by doing so, I have to stay away.
Alison, you're in some ways a little bit like me. I can work wherever my laptop is open. If I'm working at home like I am today, or if I'm working from an office, or if I'm working on the road, my laptop's open, I'm working. So the whole work from home policy, okay, works.
Yeah.
You were saying yesterday there was a general internet outage. Was there a fear that the whole thing was going to come apart at that stage?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's funny because I'm a pretty grounded person. And as you said, I work from home, I work from anywhere. I've worked from cars and trains and flights and anything, I just pop it open. And there was a moment that I thought, oh my gosh, like this is
what happens if I can't get online?
Yeah. What happens if I can't get online and I don't have a TV? It's where all my news comes from as well. And, and I just thought, what's going on? Yeah, there was a bit of a moment, and then I just went on the Italian websites, the news sites, and they thankfully reported that there was a countrywide issue with one of the major telecom carriers.
So you're dealing with a lot of the DMOs on one level. Are they beginning to think past the crisis yet? Are they thinking of new content, new creative, new campaigns to run for that day when things are better? Or have they shut down completely?
Yeah, so I deal with primarily hotels and resorts, but also destination management.
Okay.
But I would say right now they are in crisis mode. I mean, they are working with severe layoffs. They're working to understand, do they have to declare bankruptcy? Hotels have been completely shut down. They are not open. Nothing is open. People have, I have my contacts, director of sales, the GMs, et cetera, completely down, and they don't know for how long. Wow. So they're not exactly gung-ho to talk about this comeback story quite yet. They are resilient. I mean, I think that's something that's so beautiful about the Italian culture. It's just, it's notwithstanding everything that they have weathered through the years and continue to weather as a member of the EU, and not always the most seen in the greatest light in the EU sometimes by other EU members, but there is a passion and there's a steadfast commitment, and there is a true pride in culture and what they have to offer. And so I think that is there. I mean, one of the most beautiful things that has continued to come throughout, even in the last 10 days, is people have been leaving Post-it notes, which say andrà tutto bene, which means everything will go well, everything will be okay. And you just see them randomly.
Just pause on that again. This would be on the street, stuck to a lamppost.
Yep. Or stuck to a lamppost, or at the metro. You when we were able to go to the metro, you would see it on the ticket machine. I saw it, at a parking garage. Wow. And that's the thing. Wow. Yeah. And then there's also a hashtag that's trending, which is, there is no better place to be quarantined than Italy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
So there's a sweetness, there's a sense of things will, and then obviously there's also,
there's real inspiration in that. It's almost, I love the poetic graffiti there. There's some that's quite sweet.
And then there's a phrase that is used often, which is forza e coraggio. So courage, for like be strong, forza e coraggio, and just people keep saying that to one another. And I think there is a true solidarity here.
So one of the questions from our participants in the chat room there, Marjorie asks, how are hotels coping? I can only imagine the emotion, and I think you painted half the picture there, where there will be conversations with accountants going on. There are Excel spreadsheets being drawn up, and there's hard decisions being made. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about can you share maybe one or two stories to give us a sense of how they're reacting, both directly with yourself, but also how will they get through this?
Yeah, so one client that I worked with, they had 3 small luxury boutique hotels in Rome. They initially, when this hit on that first weekend, so about 3 weeks ago, they closed one of the 3 to try to condense all of their reservations into the other 2. And then they slowly but surely then closed a second. And now they're completely closed, and they don't know if they will reopen even in June. So they've completely shuttered their business for the next, at least 2 to 3 months, potentially longer. Another client that I worked with also did the same. They had 2 properties in Rome, so they completely closed one property, and one they're just focusing on that property. Another client that I have is due to open a new 5-star luxury hotel in Florence in June. Part of their construction team was from the north of Italy in those towns. Wow. So they were quarantined. Their construction team was quarantined 3 weeks ago, and now will this hotel open in 2 to 3 months time? And then that has that ripple effect, obviously with Mario and his business. I mean, I work with hotels and resorts and DMCs and DMOs, but I also come into contact with the small businesses, the foodie tours, the tour guides, the cooking classes.
Yeah. Look, it's a seat or it's a bed night. It's at the end of the day, it's a type of inventory, but to get that filled every night it's a moving machine.
Exactly.
And it's little bits of demand that come from like a tour producer like Mario. It might be going through 3 or 4 different channels before it gets to the final demand side. Are the Californians, are the Finnish, are they feeling comfortable enough to go to? So when you think about how complex it could be to restart things back up to peak level in time for the peak season.
Yeah. Well, also because you're thinking too, I mean, the reality in Rome is very different than the reality. And I think we saw that a little bit in Italy when, there is a bit of, obviously Italians not only in manufacturing, but Italy is also a huge destination for the Chinese traveler. And so we saw
Europe, it's
a drop.
the #1 destination.
Exactly. So I remember speaking to my clients about this, and they saw that drop, but they thought, okay, well, we can allocate for that. That's not a problem. We can figure that out as long as the high season is better in this way.
Yeah.
But now, as we're seeing this ripple effect of the virus throughout the world, even if Italy bounces back and it says, okay, we're healthy,
we're open for business, but everybody else is quarantined. What are we going to do?
But everybody else is quarantined on the other side of the world. So what are you going to do?
Okay. So another question that came in, and I'll direct it to you. You can tell me to go away if I'm directing too many questions at you, but I like this one. The Italian PM, interesting to get an American perspective on this as well. The Italian Prime Minister, much like what's happened in large corporations, one that comes to mind straight away is Cathay Pacific. They asked their staff, listen, 3 weeks unpaid leave, or there wasn't really an or else. So all the staff had to take some holiday time, unpaid leave, just to allow the company to survive a little bit. The Italian PM has asked people to take their time off now in order to help the company survive. What will happen when you've got a nation of potential outbound tourists with no available free time to take? What will happen, in August, September, October, when hopefully we're through all of this and Italians can't move anywhere because they've no free time left?
Right. I mean, I think that the way he said it, and again, political beliefs aside, I think this is a time when
I'm not trying to politicize this. I'm just
exactly.
Trying to take
but yeah, I think the way he's portrayed it, and I think the way that people are honoring it is, okay, this is the sacrifice we have to make, because otherwise you're out of a job completely. And it doesn't matter if you wanted to take vacation in August, because you wouldn't have a job. I mean, it's like, you're making this sacrifice. There are many sacrifices and compromises that have to be made now. So when Italians, when we get through this, and when, they get their sort of lives back, I imagine, yes, some people will be really frustrated and unhappy that they can't, take that sort of 2 weeks in Sardinia or whatever, the 2 weeks in New York, the vacations that they had programmed too. But I think that this is so intense right now. I mean, this feeling of not being able to leave your home and not knowing if you're going to have money to pay your mortgage, your bills, to feed your children, I think it puts it in perspective, and you start to say, okay, I'll take the 3 weeks vacation that I need to take now.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's no accounting for human decency.
No.
There was a run on my local pharmacy, literally an hour after the announcement was made here, on baby medicine.
Yeah.
People were just emptying the shelves of, baby paracetamol. It's kind of crazy what'll happen sometimes. Just one last point before you go, and I bring in Julieta, Alison. You're a small business owner. You're gonna have to, generate some cash anyway. But do you see any gaps there? I mean, look, we are where we are. We have to weather the storm. It looks like it's a big one, But are there any gaps? Are there any opportunities there for, I don't know, anything between a large multinational corporation or, a small startup or a small team to address in the meantime? Is there anything that are there any opportunities there we can capture?
I mean, I think that, one of the things we talked about just on our kind of startup call was the idea of how to start to share things via technology and how to connect with the technology that we thankfully do have today that sometimes has undermined our ability to connect and be social. But now that we are forced to do this social distancing, how can we still connect with one another? I mean, that's what, so many of us who work in travel, that's what we seek. That's our passion, to connect with others, to understand other cultures, to experience what another person experiences. And so I'm not necessarily talking about the influencer world, but I guess what I'm saying is new ways to truly authentically be in one another's lives in this deep pause that we're going to have to take. And I know some friends here in Rome. I know an archaeologist who also does tours and so forth. He's talking to the cultural ministry here about going into museums solo eventually, when it's possible, solo, and doing these incredible tours so that people can still be able to see the museums. Maybe they may not be able to get into, and it's just, I think that there are those opportunities. And I think, again, I keep kind of thinking of this theme of the solidarity and the uniting. And we thankfully have platforms to do that now.
Okay, well, I know that if we can make a connection between two smart people, smarter ideas will come from it. If you're just joining us, you're watching the live show from Travel Massive. We are discussing an industry in quarantine, our response to the COVID-19 crisis. We have a weekly chat. It looks like we'll be running this for a couple of weeks now, but if you're just joining us, feel free to chat here with us on Zoom. Maria, the producer, will pick up on your questions and will put it to me. We're talking with some Travel Massive members and chapter leaders from around the world. We've just been speaking with Alison Sager from the Rome chapter, where she runs things there. I'm going to bring in Julieta Delgado from Buenos Aires. Julieta is I'm going to get your title absolutely wrong, but you're one of the resourcing team for Tours by Locals.
Yes.
And Tours by Locals, which I knew nothing about before our pre-call. You guys work with about 4,400 guides in 160 countries. You've been going since the last crisis. You were born out of a disaster.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that you guys have a couple of tips for us how to survive the current disaster. Julieta, do you want to tell us a little bit about your own role quickly? And I want to hear then a very, very selfish perspective. What's it like in Buenos Aires?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, hi all. Indeed, I work in the tour experience department for Tours by Locals. Basically, my current role is guide recruitment specialist. So I work, contacting guides from all over the world to join our team.
Source content that can be then distributed onto different channels. So you're the person who's responsible for getting the guides to show up in the first place.
Yeah, basically it's the way it works. And I'm actually working as well, researching some potential partners or initiatives that may be of interest for us. So what we actually do in Tours by Locals is connecting travelers with local guides from all over the world, providing, of course, private tours and 5-star experiences.
Okay. What's life like in Buenos Aires?
Well, at this moment, trying not to panic.
Yeah, I mean, is it hysteria? Is it a sea, an ocean of face masks? Give me a sense of it, because I can tell you about Dublin. I have no idea what it's like.
Okay.
Really.
So no, not yet. With fortune, we can go over the situation. We just have a few confirmed cases. So I wouldn't say mass hysteria so far. But yeah, of course, there's a crisis going on, and the government is taking some policies and some things into action. So hopefully this will unfold in a good way for us.
Have you started to discuss the idea of a lockdown like we were seeing in Europe?
Yeah, we're just getting some like shows shut down. And the government is taking some actions, but this is really recent. I would say like 24 to 48 hours. So maybe in a couple of hours I can share more information.
So from an industry perspective then, working in travel from Buenos Aires, has there been contraction in size of local bookings? Has there been a contraction in inbound bookings for you guys? And then we can talk maybe about your international perspective as well.
Well, from a local perspective, I would say that the contraction is for outside. So for other bookings outside Argentina, not so far from us. But well, these are the trends right now. The local business is not actually yet so affected, but we should check in a few weeks and see how the situation unfolds from here.
Giulietta, you had an interesting perspective about how to run a cancellation policy. Can you give me a couple of bullet points on that? Because what I wanted to cover really was, look, if you're in a travel retail position, as in you're selling to someone, what is the best practice for a cancellation policy or strategy at this point?
Okay, so first of all, Kevin, let me say that we do know that the impact that coronavirus is having across the industry has been both disrupting and overwhelming so far. As you mentioned, actually Tours by Locals was founded in 2008, so after the global financial crisis. We know that tourism trade is being hit hard and affected in different ways. So a part of my role is taking a huge part of my day to speak with guides from all over the world. So I know that there's panic everywhere and the situation is getting worse. So our approach, I would like to share it with you, hopefully provide some ideas in how to navigate through the crisis.
I will come back to you about the guides again in a minute because I'm curious how they're going to survive, but keep going. What should we do?
I wouldn't say that there's like an overall recipe, but as for us, the thing with is like we were seeing a significant decrease in sales. We were getting hundreds of calls on a daily basis from the travelers, from the guys asking questions and commenting, of course, on the situation. So we had, of course, a lot of meetings to plan ahead for this. But at the end, for us, it all came down to one thing. So what's the cornerstone of our business? So what is Tours by Locals for us? In our case, our products relies on quality. Our product is based on a personalized service. We need to guarantee a 5-star tour and a unique, enjoyable experience. So this situation was impacting directly into the product that we are offering. So what we did is actually, we do have a force majeure policy. So actually we haven't changed the policy, it's just the same. This force majeure policy is in place for all the travelers, and this states that should any event beyond the control of the traveler, let's say, for example, a natural disaster take place, so this prevents them from taking a tour with us, the experience will be refunded in full to them. So out of this scenario with the coronavirus outbreak, the thing that we did was deciding to extend the policy and apply it, of course, to this situation. So treating the coronavirus as a global force majeure event. So as I was saying, the idea behind this applying the policy is also protecting the guides, and I will share more information about that later. The idea is to protect the bookings as well. We are protecting our work at the same time.
Isn't there a perfect conflict there, though, Giulietta? Like, you know, on one level, like the customer is always right, and on another level, look, the guides need to make a living.
Yeah, of course.
Those are in absolute perfect conflict right now.
Yeah,
how do you, as a marketplace, how do you balance between both sides?
As a marketplace, well, what I can say is that Yeah, of course, there's the saying that the customer is always right, but we work really close with our guide partners, and not only for the crisis situation, is the way that we do business. And we need to take under consideration that actually we don't have a single fixed income. So every dollar that the company gets is because there's a booking behind it with our partners. So we need to be really careful when making the decisions. And of course, as I was commenting previously, what we are doing is we are calling the guides and finding different solutions for each of the places and partners.
Now, I want to talk about that because, and I think we touched on the subject a little bit with Mario at the beginning of the call.
Mm-hmm.
2/3 of these, of at least from Mario's perspective, and let's say he's wildly wrong, and it's 50% or it's not 2/3. I don't know, but I'd say a lot of the guides in the world are going to be some form of gig economy type worker.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to be stressed. What's the feedback from you, and what suggestions are you able to give them? It must be an existential kind of conversation, Julieta, when you're speaking to them.
Yeah, it could get there. Sometimes we issued a communication, of course, to all of the partners that we have. And that's why we started to get some conversations. So this was a wake-up call for us, and giving them as well the possibility to cancel, of course, the tours. At sometimes, yeah, it could get trickier to get that conversation. But when we started to get some numbers, first of all, the idea is to provide calm to this situation. The current outbreak is like getting panic everywhere. So the idea when we speak to the guys is just to better explain our decision and our mindset besides this. So for us, for example, let's say that the customer wants to book a tour during this time, because this is actually happening for us. So if they're willing to book a tour, the customer knows that they can do it with confidence. So that means as well from our side, protecting the bookings for the future. So as for the cancellations, let's say, just to provide some rough numbers about the picture, indeed the cancellations increased a lot. We do have, like, first of this situation, we have in between, let's say, between 5 and 8% of cancellations on a monthly basis. And due to the application of the force majeure, right now we are around 60%. But out of this 60%, the cancellations are basically for March and April in 35 and 35%. I have some numbers here. So the trend that we are seeing is that the travelers are actually waiting to make the cancellations and to reschedule their tours. So let's say
That's
that.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So for the first, and we'll lose everybody on the numbers, and I think you warned me about that before we had the call. You surprised me with the number, though. There's still 40% not cancelled. That's great. So
Yeah.
I was expecting 100%. So you got 40% that's still happening. Okay. And
Yeah.
of the 60%, it's not a complete disaster because, first of all, it's very short term. So it's last minute. It's as necessary. It's not like they're canceling next January's tours or whatever they're doing. But most of your customers, maybe 2/3 of them, are still staying with you. They're just postponing.
Yes,
They're
and
not
we
getting a cancellation. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. And we actually, because if they want to cancel the tour, they will still be able to do it in a few months with the already cancellation policy that we have. So it's not like we are changing that. But the thing is that after speaking with some travelers, we want their trip planning experience to be exciting, not one fraught with anxiety. So it's part of the mindset of the company. And they also know that if they are actually willing to book a tour with us, they can do it with confidence, because they know that if the global situation gets worse and they decide to not travel after all, they will receive the refund. But if they don't, they will be more likely to book a tour with us, even if the situation gets worse.
Julieta, I'm going to bring everybody back in for a final thought. Just a minute. Maria will be sending you around something to get you ready in the meantime. But Julieta, before we get to that, what are the, and we've touched on it a little bit, I just want to really press on this. What are the gaps that you see in the market? You know, given that you work an awful lot with the supply side of your marketplace, what are the gaps there that we can be looking at as an industry? Is there something that we can learn from your experience? Are you spotting some new opportunities there that we should all be chasing, whether it's for a big corporation, a large structured organization like yourselves, or even, you know, a side hustle for a small company? What are the gaps that you see?
Yeah, since we do have a really diverse public and attendees today, I would like to say that seeing past a crisis involves the fact that you don't need to panic at the situation unfolds in front of you. My advice at this point would be try to see beyond this moment. Focus on the strengths of your product or your service, and seek for opportunities during these hard times. This is the moment to bring your A game and to rely on your business and your certainties. For example, for our tour guides, we don't have like a recipe that we use with all of them. We just get to know them, get to know about their experience, get to know about the experience that they would like to offer to the travelers. Maybe focus on a more local approach or an immersive experience, or trying to see and think outside the box. Of course, the highlight tours are not maybe the best option right now, but you can look into other experiences or another kind of tours. But at the end, I'm confident that we will rise from this crisis in a better way. And if we stand together and learn from each other, we will get wiser.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to come back to you in just a second. Just
Sure.
a final word from all of our panelists. And like last week, I'm a stickler for this. You can say anything you like as long as you say I agree with the other guy. Just one last comment quickly in 20 seconds. What's your next step, Mario? I mean, what are you doing first thing tomorrow morning? What's your next step for this crisis?
So basically, what we're doing now, we're trying to, of course, get in touch with everybody who's about to travel in the next months, and we have a lot of the tours booked June, July, and we're just telling them to wait and see. So we're trying now to contain, and we will refund. We are trying to refund 100% everybody, so retrieving the costs. Or trying to postpone, as Julieta said, to postpone the holidays. We're also trying to make people putting down a deposit for the future booking that yet to be decided with some sort of deal. We're trying to get some new cash, but the general idea is to just stop for a few months and look at what we can, improve, new ideas, and be ready for when the big season will be coming. And so personally, I as I said, in the morning, I'm doing the stay-home dads, and then so taking the kids to school, cooking for them, and then I work like 7 or 8 hours in the evening. So I think it's a good balance of life and work. So not all the bad moments count.
I'm looking forward to the output of the deep thought and thinking about the future options, Mario. I'm really looking forward to that. Crisis, yes, but when smart people start thinking, I think we're on the right track. Thanks for that, though. You're into kind of contain and communicate and think about the future. Alison, can you give me your 20-second soundbite on your next step? What are you doing? Unless you're running for a plane, what is your exact next step tomorrow morning? What are you up to?
Well, I think it's a very much a day-to-day basis being in lockdown. So I think that, there is a sense of, okay, what do I do to take care of myself with the fact that like I can't leave the house? And then, okay, what do I think about in the next, 3 to 6 months? So right now I'm doing a lot of crisis communications management with my clients, and a lot of hand holding and just kind of being a therapist to be a soundboard for them. but also kind of saying, okay, if this is going to go longer than we think, because we don't know how it's going to extend into the North America and South America, which I think will eventually get hit. How do we pivot and use other resources that I have, other talents, other skills that I might want to develop.
That's great, Julieta. The last words. How can we get through this? What's your actual next step personally? It's not the company line necessarily. It might be on a personal level or at least a professional level.
Okay.
What's your next step tomorrow morning?
My next step is actually getting closer to our partners. So basically tomorrow I have a brainstorming session with some Asian partners just to see how we can improve their profiles and improve the situation for them. So as from my point of view, is the moment to assess your strengths and build from there. Build would be the correct tense for this situation. So yeah, touching base with guides and discussing things with them.
Strengthening relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice place to stop. Don't forget our advice from last week, which was to find a buddy somewhere in the travel business that you haven't reached out to for a long time. Make contact and see, is there anything that you can do to help? That was Ian Cummings' advice to everybody. Thank you, all three of you, for taking part. Mario Bernardi, Alison Sager, and Julieta Delgado. You'll find your bios and descriptions of what you do in the accompanying show notes. That's the bit underneath what you're listening to, or something where you found the podcast being streamed from. This was the Travel Massive live show, an industry in quarantine, hosted by me, Kevin, in Dublin, produced by Maria in Sofia, and joining us from North Wales, Rome, and Buenos Aires are three guests for today. If you'd like to take part in a future episode, please reach out to us live at travelmassive.com. But in the meantime, if you want to catch up on where we've come from and where we're going, you can always check out the accompanying blog post and other material over on travelmassive.com. But for now, thank you for listening.
Thank you.